Kishshana Palmer, CEO and founder of Kishshana & Co. I'm a coach, a facilitator, and a trainer, and I help career professionals and entrepreneurs like you grow. Grow your skills, grow your teams, and grow your revenue. Welcome to the Secret Lives of Leaders. This is where I am going to be taking a completely new approach to looking at topics in leadership and management in our sector today. I'm going to be taking a fresh look at the classics, and also I'm going to be peeling back the curtain on some topics that we just don't talk about enough. Over the next few weeks, I'll be interviewing some amazing subject matter experts and thought leaders, reviewing some pretty cool books and articles, and I'll even be wagging my finger and giving the total side eye to folks in our industry and our sector who aren't talking about the things we should be talking about enough. And I want you in on the conversation. So go to thesecretlivesofleaders.com or follow me on LinkedIn. You can find me at Kishshana Palmer, and I look forward to seeing you. Enjoy. The computer. Here we go. Okay, we're getting started, buddy. All right, y'all. I want to welcome you to another awesome episode of The Secret Lives of Leaders. Yes! And today I am so excited to be on with my friend, Ben Bisbee. I'm Kishshana Palmer. I am the CEO and founder of Kishshana & Co., where I help amazing professionals and nonprofit organizations grow their businesses, grow their teams, and grow your revenue. And for those of y'all in the for-profit sector, me and Ben are coming for you. Don't you worry. And so today, I am so excited to have my friend Ben Bisbee on. Ben is the CEO of Rhinocorn Consulting, a national consulting firm. You know, they have you over there in the Midwest, Ben, you see.
They do. It's dangerous.
Yes,
it's
dangerous.
It is.
And when I had to think about what Ben does, you know, for a living, you know, I talked about it and I thought about it in my mind, you see. I realized that Ben is the kind of folk, the kind of consultant, the kind of expert, the kind of stakeholder whisperer that gets in there and get groups that don't really talk to each other, right? And they sort of faux like each other. You know, y'all pretend like each other to actually break down barriers and have real conversations so you can accelerate your mission. Ben, did I get that right?
Yeah. I talk about, I build up the stakeholder spaces. So I make sure that what you're doing with your volunteers, your major donors, your board members, your corporations is working. And then I tear down those ridiculous silos that we all put ourselves in. We're like, your volunteer department and your fundraising department don't know what each other are doing. That's why this isn't working out, right? So I'm like that guy. I'm like,
yes,
stuff up, tearing stuff down. Either way, I'm making good use of the crane that I'm renting. So.
Exactly. Do you know there's a whole business for crane rentals? Like, and crane rentals.
And backhoes. Like
random stuff.
We should quit what we're doing and just literally invest in like 4 backhoes that we rent out to anybody who needs a backhoe to build a pool or whatever they're doing with it.
That is so true, because real talk, I have a friend who actually made his first $1 million on renting cement mixers.
Please don't tell me that, because I don't know how to get one, but I bet it's not that hard.
Oh my God, it's totally not that hard. So clearly we're in the business of helping folk. And so listen, y'all, if we were slimy and slithery sales folk type of people, we might be already rich because we had the goods and the sauce. But
I'm concerned about your pipelines, not your sidewalks. And that's
exactly.
that's where I've screwed up. I get it now. I get it. This is why I'm broke.
That's it. Well, Ben, I am so excited to talk with you today. And I know folks are going to be like leaning into their screen, trying to see what we are going to talk about today. So, you know, one of the things that I always like to ask, and I want to hear your version of the story, Ben.
All right.
How did we meet?
Oh, how did we meet?
Yeah.
I'd like to think, you know, how does anyone get to meet their stalker, right? That's the question one always wants to know. Is it from a distance and you thought you saw a glimmer of somebody using binoculars? Is it that you look over and you realize that the drapes drop real quick as somebody was trying to peer through the window? It's probably not my best face to tell you how I met you. So let's talk about how you met me, right?
Yeah.
So other than finding you online probably a good year ago and thinking like, oh, I love this woman's style, and I've seen some of your stuff pop up, and I've I joke that I'm always trying to find the new brat pack. I'm always trying to find people who like love to collaborate and have really smart things to say. And so I'm always looking at other people in the sector and trying to figure out like who to connect with. So lo and behold, like I looked at you a couple of times, but I couldn't find a good excuse to bug you that didn't probably come off as stalkerish. So I saw that we were going to be working together in Northeast Ohio, actually at the AFP conference a few weeks back. But then I found out that you were speaking, your keynote there, right? Then I found out you were actually speaking at Cause Camp, which I was always going to. So I was like, yes. So I hadn't been to Cause Camp, so I didn't quite get how, I don't want to say small because that's the wrong way to articulate how intimate that event is. So I was just like praying to God I could get like 3 minutes of your time just to kind of say like, hey, remember this face because you're going to see it in a few weeks. But then lo and behold, like we had talked otherwise, and then we like hugged it out, and then we cut our fingers and pushed them together. Right? We did exactly right. We were like, right. So no, so we met at Cause Camp, but I feel like, all kidding aside, that like I had slightly gotten to know you and kind of like slowly fell in love with you a good almost year in advance, just seeing your work online, seeing your gorgeous website, which I know probably sounds like a plug, but is like literally worth repeating, like how beautiful your website is, and how beautiful you are on your website. And so yeah, that's really kind of how we met, formally at Cause Camp, online otherwise.
Now, guys, I just want to say my version of the story is Ben just appeared in my life, and I did not realize that I was sort of like lightweight stalking him for a year because he used to do this series called The Rundown. And I would like go, oh, who is this guy? And why does he have so much time to read? Lightweight jealous because I love to read, and I was starting to like slap myself on the hand. How dare I call myself a trainer and I'm not reading enough? And so if it wasn't for Ben was like his little light in the darkness. Every week where I'd be like, oh, thank God I don't have to call information. He could have been selling anything, y'all, okay? All types of ideas. I'd have been like, Ben put it together so it's right. And so that was like my first like,
I don't think I really realized that. I ended the Rundown formally as a newsletter, but I brought it, it's now online, right? On Facebook.
31st century.
31st century nonprofits, right? But I, feel free to join. But so I tell people all the time, there's lots of things about me that's worth knowing, right? And so you don't think to yourself, like, how can I be like him? There's a lot of things you don't want to be like him. But I am a speed reader and I have really high comprehension skills. So when people are like, how do you blow through? Because I still blow through 30 to 50 articles a week. I plow through articles I read. And for me, it's like, it became, I say a labor of love, but the truth is it was a compulsion to want to share just good stuff, right? Like I would read these amazing articles and I'm like, oh, why aren't we talking about this? Somebody has like a key to the lock. Like, why aren't we talking about? Yeah. And so I appreciate you saying that, because the whole rundown and the whole concept of the informational sharing piece, and I jokingly refer to it as informational networking, is like, I don't think we're often sharing like really strong content. I don't think but I read so much. And so what really happened was I had a client who was like a coaching client, and I would like read great articles and just like send it off to him. And finally, God love him, he finally just like screamed uncle and was like, look, you're just sending me these one-offs and I'm kind of not getting to it. And then I feel guilty and then I feel bad, but then I get angry at you. And so he's like, could you just like send me like weekly digest? And I was like, oh, that's what I have to do. So that's what kind of started this, but it wasn't creating the conversation I wanted, right? And so the online portion has been better because I feel like then we're really talking about it if we want to talk about it. And if we're not, like whatever. But yeah, I read a lot.
You do, but you definitely helped me step my game up. So, listen, if during this broadcast you hear the doorbell ring and then you don't hear it anymore, it's because I have paused to get the bell, because I've ordered probably like 7 books this week alone that I just wanted to be able to dig into on all types of topics in leadership and in recruiting and in having tough conversations. Because there's lots of folks that are writing. And if one more person asks me if I'm going to write a book, the answer is I'm already writing one. 2, actually. They're coming. Get ready. Gird your loins. But in the meantime, there's so many amazing experts and thinkers and folks who have something important to say that we can continue to learn from. And so I just think that you just really encouraged me to get back on the horse of something I love so much and had sort of found excuses to make time for. So tip one, y'all, in this whole thing. Read, okay? It is fundamental.
Seriously.
Okay.
First of all, let me just say, I think it's adorable that was a really long excuse to say that your doorbell's going to ring for Chinese food. But regardless, you know, do you get your Kung Pao? Nobody cares. Okay, you don't have to pretend that you're reading. It's all good, right? I mean, you're like, I'm reading. It's fine. So it's funny because we haven't talked a lot about this. So like I've got 2 books that are going to be coming over the next 2 years.
Yes, tell us about it. I want to hear it.
So I can't go into a tremendous amount of depth yet because neither one has been fully inked, but they're both industry books. One is built on a series of resources related to stronger online virtual management that I'm working with my writing partner, Kathy Wisniewski. So she and I have been working on this book.
I love Kathy.
Kathy's the best. I mean, my God, she's like the yin to my yang when it comes to this world. So it's funny because we've kind of been talking about some concept behind this book for almost a decade, and we finally are working with a publishing house on the concept and working through all the details. There'll be a lot that I can actually talk about legitimately over the next 3 months, but I just can't quite yet. The other one, and this is going to sound like, this is going to be the most vague posty answer ever, where just like, rough day, send love, right? You know what I mean? Like on Facebook. I can't get into it, but I've had the worst day ever. So I have been, like this year, I've been really committed. I mean, our relationship is a total reflection of this. I've been really committed to looking at people that really inspire me and just finding an opportunity to just connect, even if it's just 20 minutes of coffee or a brief conversation, to just kind of see if there's something there by way of making a connection and doing something cool. So there's somebody who has been in the volunteer side of the industry for decades, and she's incredibly well known and she's really well liked. And I would say she often plays a quieter role than some of the other bigger names in the industry. And I've always really loved her work. So I decided a couple weeks, she wrote this really cool piece that I thought would make a good book if it had been really fleshed out. Yes. So I reached out to her and I was like, hey, look, you make it off this call and call 911. You know, just feel like click, but like I have this crazy idea and I would love to work with you on it. And it's completely born out of something you recently wrote. And I think it would make like this amazing book. And I am already working on one, and I would love to talk with you over like, and just take the next year to really kind of flesh out the idea and kind of work through the ideas. And she's game. And
that's so awesome.
Yeah, I think the first time around she was a little bit like, who are you and what do you want? And then when we kind of talked it through, and she kind of, and God bless her, she asked a really, I think, valuable question for people like us that are always kind of like out there hunting and gathering, right? Which is like, what are you trying to get out of this? And in this specific instance, I was like, look, I want us both to make money. And I think this has the potential to be like a true bestseller. I think it's an angle that no one's ever taken. It's to an audience that often doesn't get spoken to. But I said, more so like, I'm really passionate about just ideas coming to light and about things coming into fruition, and where they go is wherever they go. But I said like 100 bright ideas a day that I'm lucky if I do something with 2 of them every given week. So
that's because that's talent, sir. That's talent right there.
Well, sure. I was actually watching the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. She has I cannot think of her name, which makes me feel terrible, but she has this amazing TED Talk. And I've been telling everybody to watch it. It's from, I think, like 2011. And essentially she said something that had like struck me to my core. And I actually repeated this to the woman I was talking with. And she said that she thinks one of the reasons why so many artistic people feel so vulnerable and often drive themselves to really terrible places, like alcoholism and suicide and so forth, is because like we have created a history where we tell people who have talent that it's coming from them, as opposed to being a portal by which talent flows through. And so she has this really interesting philosophy that she's drawn from like the Greeks, where she's like, you know, back in the day, the idea of genius was something that flowed through you from other resources, and you were just a vessel. And sometimes you had it and sometimes you didn't. And if you were more often a vessel than not, then that like was kind of a divinity conversation. And it was something that made me feel like, especially because she was making the point of like, on your worst day, if you can't manifest something of value, you feel like somehow like there's something wrong with you. And she's like, sometimes it's just that like, it's no longer a two-way conversation in that moment, and just like chill out, go get a milkshake and just calm down. So I appreciate that, but I've become like a really big proponent of kind of having a conversation that sounds like, you know, let genius flow through you and make use of the things that make sense to you, and let the rest of it go. But also don't get caught up if like today your writing is like crap. Like it's not a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of the genius is just, your filters are too thick that day.
Yeah, right. You're like, you need to kind of thin them out.
Yeah, but no, so I got some books too. So I'm excited. Like it's going to be.
So excited.
We're gonna, we're going places, my dear, you and me. And then we'll probably figure out what the third book is for both of us, which will be
something hilarious and salacious.
Uh-huh.
Supposed to be like, oh my God, did you hear what Ben and Kish did? I mean, it's just, yes, we did hear. I love it.
Be like, yeah, I bought it. I have the audio version.
Hello.
I heard Pixar's making a film about it, starring vacuum cleaners.
I mean, there'd be some lessons to be learned and love.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. And you'll shed a tear. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It's a long movie, so you may have to pee.
Yes, but it's okay. There'll be plenty of lessons.
Right. Hold it, because there's gonna be 2 end credits.
Yes, exactly right.
Right.
So one of the things that you just kind of laid out was that you've had the ability to be able to really connect with folks that you didn't know, but sort of felt the vibe, which means, folks, it's possible to get a vibe through your online presence.
Yeah.
And so if your personal brand, how you show up in the world, how folks perceive you, how your online presence really dovetails and aligns with your in-person personality, who you really are. If you're not thinking about it, working on it, and making sure that it's really authentic, folk will know, because you absolutely, that absolutely comes out in how you write, in how you interact, in what kind of pictures you take, how you do all that stuff. You don't have to want to be front street, and you don't have to want to be famous, and you don't have to want to be world renowned. How you show up is how you show up, and it's possible to make friends as an adult, which is something I really believe people have written articles on it. I've done speeches on it. I probably should write a book on it is possible to do that. And so when did you know? Because we met, and we could have been fake nice at conference. We could have been, oh my God, smile up in the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
But when
did you?
Right, hey, see you soon. And we've both done that. Hello.
Bye, Kishshana.
Or Keisha.
Right.
My name has an N in it, folks. I know there's SHs, okay? It's my parents' fault. Don't blame me, all right? I tried to change it. They got upset. But so how did you know, like you're like, ooh, we go together. Okay, what happened, or what set of things happened that made you say, because I know what my answer is, but I want to hear yours. So what made you go like, oh, all right, we go together?
You know what it is? I think my bullshit meter's high. Mm-hmm. And so I really can sort of, I think, smell bullshit from a mile away. But I also have become, especially in the last year, I've become really attracted to vulnerability in all its forms. I've been really attracted to people who aren't interested in showcasing a certain sense of perfection or trying to have all the right answers. And even so, we had a chance to kind of interact, and you were just really likable and really funny and really funny and kind and sweet and all that jazz, right? All the things that kind of make a good person that you want to connect with. And when I saw you speak that first day, there were several points where you just very sort of quippingly said like, and you know what, we don't have all the answers, and we're going to find the answers. And sometimes you got to kind of figure this out. And sometimes you kind of have to like put the time in. And there's little things that to me just was like, in my mind, I kept saying like, I think Kish and I could maybe become like really good friends, because it's rare. Like, I mean, I don't want to put people on Front Street. I'm not going to name names, but like, it's rare in this industry to leverage your vulnerability as an asset, right? Like, it is like, people think our job once we transfer over into this space is to have like all the answers, or to like be quick with the answers. And one of my very first jobs in college, when I was working at a fitness center at Kent State, and one of the things, it was this guy was like a total meathead, a couple of years above us, but he was in charge of all of us, and he didn't have a tremendous amount of value when it came to management. But one of the things he said that has stuck with me to this day is he was like, hey, I'm a fitness major, I'm a physical therapy major. Most of you are doing whatever you're doing. People are going to ask you all day long how to use the equipment, or how to do this, or how to do that, or whatever the case may be. And you need to get real comfortable right now saying, I don't know, I'll find out. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's a nice answer. And like, I grew up, and my stepdad's a pastor, and we grew up with him our whole lives. And even in that setting, there was like an expectation that us by proxy, but certainly my dad had to have like the answer. Like, why did my mother die? What am I supposed to do? And that there was supposed to be this automatic, not only was it supposed to be an answer to the question, but it was supposed to be sort of this tailored answer to the recipient of the question. And I struggle with that as a young person who was kind of notorious for being that guy that was often said to things were often said to me like, you have an answer to everything. And I was like, well, no, I have a reply for everything. And I think there's a huge difference there. I don't always have an answer for much, but I have a reply. And what I've learned, and what I connected with you with in particular, was I've learned that when you can harness that moment where you sort of go like, I don't know, let's figure this out. Or, I think it's something, let me get back to you. Let's talk about this together. Let's keep unpacking the thing. Let's, that was something that it just like, it was like wind that blew through me when you spoke, that I already kind of thought like there was right? Like there was a chance that we might really hit it off for real. But then when I saw you present, I was like, yep, yeah, no, this is somebody who I'm hoping to God she does not just think that I'm like a disposable friend, or that.
Oh God,
no. But you know what I mean? Or you weren't just sort of like.
Or like when people are on the way up, or they're on a certain level, whatever that means, that they only interact or interface with those folks who they feel are either at their quote unquote level. Get out your way, y'all.
Well, and then right after that, when we talked for a few minutes, one of the things that you just said right away was like, we should do something together. And I was like, yes, like there's like a jam band mentality to a group of us that some of the times the stuff we're just enjoying each other's thought process, and it's not something we're trying to bottle and sell, right? It's just the idea that we're just there to appreciate each other's sort of like philosophies and intellects and thoughts and feelings and theories. And so that right there, I was like, cling, like it just completely endeared me to you. And I truly, as a human, sort of like instantaneously fell in love with you as a human, and was just like, where's she been? Like now we have to catch up, like on my end, like 40 some years worth.
Right. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much to catch up on.
Right.
And I think I had like a similar experience, because I feel like you were like having a conversation with one of the other conference attendees, and like I just said, oh my God, Ben like drills in to like so fast to folks, like he just reads you, like there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide, folks. Okay.
Yeah.
His bullshit meter is quite high. And I said, he is going to tell me the truth. I just had this thing like, he's going to have my back. And one of the things that I had been really leaning into, and you made this reference when we were in our formalized, when we were working as full-time practitioners for nonprofit organizations. And once you make that transition into being a consultant, it almost feels like there's like a glass wall that goes up, right? Yeah. And people are asking for advice through a little portal hole. And you have to like sliding for visitors hours, right?
For free.
No, exactly, for free. No, don't say I'm kidding. People, can I pick your brain? No. The answer is always going to be no. Look at what I wrote in the responses under this.
That's right. No, I get paid for this now. No.
Exactly. But the reality is that, when we say it's a lonely world out there, it's true, because there are folks who are, I call faux friends, like faux fur, okay? They're out there with this faux sable on. Terrible. And to be able to find folks that you can connect with and share ideas, bounce ideas off, feel like, that idea doesn't work for me, then you take that one. Oh, Kish, I thought of something, but I don't have nothing to do with it. Do you have something to do with this? Oh my God, I totally do. Or I just dreamed up something for you. Like, to be able to have that creativity in work that sometimes doesn't always feel creative, because you have to be thinking about strategy. You have to be thinking about tactics. You have to be thinking about operationalizing those things. Sometimes, and there's been a way to do consulting work. And so when we don't approach our work in the way, then it all of a sudden makes us more outliers. And so I was like, oh, we go together completely, because I can just be my whole self and it'll be just fine. And I'm gonna learn something that I can share. And it just felt like that. And I did think, I ask this question whenever I do these conversations, because I think it's important for us to celebrate why we connect. It ain't about bringing Kishshana up, because let me tell y'all, I know I'm fly, y'all. You hear? And Ben, he is the man. If you just type any post that I write about Ben. Ben is the man. Ben, that's because you're amazing, Ben. I mean, like, I'm the mama in the front with a poster. That's my baby. And so that is the kind of friend you get when you get me. So it's not about me, but it's about just showing that it's possible to be able to have really great connections with really smart people who have as much to give as you do, who want to do that work, and then who want to be able to help other companies, if you're on the for-profit side, other businesses. Stakeholders are stakeholders regardless of how you get money in the door. And so we just have a lot to learn from each other. And so I just think it's important to be able to highlight that. So
no, I appreciate that. I think the opposite's true too. I think one of the reasons why we relish these moments is, we talk, I'm going to get on my soapbox and I'll get back down.
Come on, get on. Let me get on it.
Right?
Let me get back and relax.
We talk a really good game about technology being the way in which people are often disassociated, right? And we talk about like, people on their phones and they're not paying attention. And I think the real truth is, and don't get me wrong, technology is a blessing and a burden in any direction with some of that stuff. Sometimes it makes us more connected. Sometimes it does inherently make us less connected. I get it. I think though the real truth is that you hit a certain point in time as a human, and relationships are either truly authentic or they're not, right? And when they're not, and if they start to build on the not side more frequent, the more you put yourself out there, for example, the more you try to become somebody who's not just going work to home. I find those of us, and there's a lot of us, and I don't just mean the consulting space, just as humans that are spending time trying to be present when we are, you start to actually see that with or without technology, just as that example, that the inauthentic existence is real, and it's burdensome, and it's sad, and it's frustrating. And so when you meet then somebody who, like when you and I connected, and there's like, I think about like Julia Campbell and Sarai, and when you meet people who are just like genuinely amazing people, then it's just so rewarding, because you actually spend a decent amount of time being surrounded by people who they're always looking for the angle. Like the example, I was talking about this earlier with somebody, and I said, I think the analogy, because I'm like an analogy whore, like spoiler alert.
All right, listen, okay, that's my dad's bread and butter.
Every
lesson told through an analogy. I can't.
Yes, I don't have the delightful like accent that your father has, so it doesn't sound as appealing when I say it. But it probably sounds so worldly. Like, who said that? Like, I said that, and you're like, oh, okay. But I feel like there's those of us that really are a shape looking for the same shape receptacle, right? It's like it's the square peg looking for the square hole. And then there's those of us that I think actually sort of live and dream and talk in color, and we want to blend tapestries. We want to take those sort of yellow and blue moments and green, and we think about ourselves as part of a conversational spectrum. We want the table to keep getting rounder and bigger, and we're thinking that way. And so when we're met with somebody who just thinks themselves as a very finite shape, looking for a very finite shape to fill, it's hard for us, because we're like, oh, like, show us your colors, show us who you are. We want to blend on page.
Right.
And they like, don't, right?
No, where do I go?
And so you're like, okay, but then when you do find somebody who's like a spectrum of color, and your spectrum of color, all of a sudden, like, it's all this wonderful fragmented light that goes everywhere, and it's magical. But it is rare. It's rare. It's hard, and I think that is the building block, obviously, for friendship, but it's also a building block for, I think, certain levels of like true success, especially in our industry, going back to the industry.
Absolutely.
And it's hard, right? Because I meet far too many people who they're always just basically putting you through some form of ropes. They're kind of they're like, so what do you do? So how do you do it?
Well, who do you work with? First of all, let me tell y'all something watching this. Don't ask me who I work with, okay? I work with
if you ask me the first 5 minutes about a client, I know exactly what page we're on.
Exactly.
Because the day I would talk to somebody in the industry and ask in the first 5 minutes or the first 3 conversations, quote unquote, about your client base, on what plan does that come in? What am I getting out of that? Like, because again, it's that whole like, where did you go to school conversation?
Yes, the ABC.
And so if you say anything that doesn't sound like one of the Ivies, people are like, oh, good for you, state school. Oh,
they do that to me today. Like, oh, Bentley, where's that? I'm like, it's a really fancy, ritzy private school. And
see, people got shot at Kent State, so everyone knows Kent State, right?
You're like, forget it. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm like, where are you from? Rhode Island? Bentley. They're like, I know Bentley. Where are you from? Ohio? Bentley? Oh, I get to always like, oh, like I went to like a mail order school.
It's a fancy car though, so people probably at least associate it at that level. They're like, that sounds like a fancy school.
That school is okay.
But no, when people start asking about like your client list, when they're like, oh, what kind of clients do you have? Who are your clients? I'm like, I literally in that moment want to have this like really transparent where I want to be like, oh, really? Okay. I mean, we can do this. At this point, just whip out your resume. That's what's happening.
Right.
Like, this is no longer a conversation about some form of synergy. You're just sizing me up. Like, you're trying to figure out if I'm competition, or you're trying to figure out if I'm going to be a problem. Like, I can't with that. I can't with that. And so, yeah, when we met, it was just like, we were just both like full blown prism, right? We were just both like, full color. And it was like, full color. Like, it was just, you know, no pun intended, because I'm like, I'm hella pink. I mean, say what you want about presenting as white, but the Native American in me makes me pink.
That is a little bit, yes, it is. Although you see, I got a little color to me now. You know, I was
You
raised,
do.
I was raised last
That
week.
wedding did you well.
Come on, this is what you call, this is 48 hours and some sun, okay?
I'm saying, did you wind up seeing Rihanna?
No.
Just lie and say yes.
Oh my God.
I think from a distance.
You're like, she was over there. Yeah, no. But no.
And then double down and say something like, I'm pretty sure she was topless.
Right,
I mean, just
right,
like go
right.
there. She could be like, probably.
Look for the photos on TMZ. It'll be fine. It'll be totally fine. No, oh my gosh. Okay, so
Yeah.
Well, how do you bottle any version of your awesomeness? Like, what do you do? What does Rhinocorn Consulting like when you boil it down? What are the, not even your lane, like what's the highway you're driving on? 'Cause I know you're switching lanes.
Yeah. So, you know, I think we often don't pour the necessary resources and assets into the folks that do the best for us, right? So we get so stuck in this mindset of like the mission and the passion behind the mission that we forget about the not just the impact and influence of our donors and our volunteers and our relationships and our board members, but we kind of lose sight of the fact that like if they're not getting it and if we're not aiding them to get it, then like what are you doing? Like, right? Like this isn't helping. So I've built my entire agency to really focus on, again, building those spaces up and down. So tearing the walls down between them. You know, there's a huge overlap. I'm not going to bore us with statistics, but there's a huge overlap between donors and volunteers. And the thing that we forget all day long is that we're often sending completely disparate messages from the same house. Mm-hmm. And so we're telling donors one thing, and we're telling volunteers another thing. And then those same people, because I'm the donor volunteer, gets both and goes like,
what's happening here?
Right? And they are literally being written by separate people, and they are literally being written from a different perspective and intention.
Yeah.
We don't think about how that's sort of working. And, you know, development does get all the resources more often than not, although arguably they don't get as many as they should. Volunteer management is like the redheaded stepchild of the entire industry next to probably finance.
Yep.
And so the way I do my very best to bottle me in that space is I try to bring two things to the table all the time. I try to bring, again, an opportunity for transparent, vulnerable, sort of true self to the table, like really pushing at the people, the folks that run the things, the folks that are influenced by the things, to be more open and honest and vulnerable about where they're struggling and where they are successful, and trying to create like a safe environment for them to kind of get there, so we can kind of get through that, because often people's biggest barriers are just the way in which they interpret information or the way in which they express information. So I try really hard to sort of unpack all that. You know, these are all these like fun bumper sticker phrases, but I try to really help them unpack that. And then the other thing that I do too is I get asked all the time. I mean, there are certain assets that I carry with me, like I'm really strong at improv, like I have always been a speed reader, like my processing skills are high, my live processing skills are high. Fair enough. But the work just needs to get done, right? You just put the work in. And so I often also spend like the one thing I kind of bottle for people a little bit is having like really honest, transparent conversations with people that sound like me sort of saying, yeah, it's a lot of work, but like but the work has to be put in to make this work. There isn't a microwave answer to the question. There isn't. And so like a lot of my work is what I call capacity-based work. And my mindset with that is helping people understand, like, you are a finite person in a finite organization doing a finite type of work. Now, yes, there are best practices and there are leading experts and there are all these things, but at the end of the day, your goals have to be married against your efforts and your abilities and your opportunities. Right. And if they don't, then like that's the problem. The problem is that you haven't read the right thing, or the problem is that like you are not strong enough. The problem is any one of those things. And so you've got to start to look at where all those pieces connect and where they're disconnected. Exactly. And then put the work in. Like I've done really big things in my career. The thing that we both know that like people don't really get, like, because people will laud you all day for owning a business and they'll be like, oh my God, good for you. I can never do that, blah, blah, blah. Fair enough, right? I think it's like it's a hollow sentiment, but it's fair enough sentiment. But I think the thing that people don't realize is Okay, so when I had my first apartment out of college, right? So it was the first time I lived like on my own where essentially toilet paper wasn't being supplied to me. I had this true, I can remember this, I got like flop sweat and like a pit in my stomach, realizing that like, oh my God, because what had happened was I'd spent all this money on stuff and then I kind of had like nothing in my bank account. I was going to get paid 3 days later. But I realized like, if I don't buy toilet paper, there is no toilet paper.
There's no toilet paper.
And it was like a real, and then it was like, and there's no shampoo, and there's no this, and there's no that, and blah, blah, there's no dish soap. And I think it's the same thing when you start your own business, you realize like people don't sort of really understand, like I'm kind of everywhere right now in some ways in a very small bubble. And I'll get people say to me recently, like, everywhere I look, there you are. And it's like, yeah, and you know why? Because I put the damn work in, right?
Like, the work, y'all.
Like I literally make the calls, send the emails, do the follow-up, show up to the things, shake the hands, kiss the babies, all of it. And it's exhausting, but it's like, that's what it takes. So when I work with people, the thing that I try to sort of bottle and package and hand to them is like where we can at least with me, at least they can look me in the eyes and be like, this is a lot of work, but I think I can do it. Yes, you absolutely can. You're going to be great. But yeah, it is a shit ton of work. It is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Always say, and I think I write it everywhere. It's on my website, it's on social media. So I write it and I say it all the time. This and working with me is not crockpot love. Okay.
Nope.
Put all the ingredients in the crock pot and turn it on low and set it.
I'm stealing that.
On about the day. Steal it.
Did you TM that?
I put one of those. I said, if you don't buy toilet paper, there's no toilet paper. Ben Bisbee. Like I have so many Ben Bisbee quotes here. Look at y'all. I'm not playing on these sticky notes.
You need to stop. But it's true. Like
right then, I was like another Ben Bisbee quote.
Because people tell you like, how do I get the supply? Yeah, build a supply chain if you got to. But then guess what? You have to build the supply chain. Like the supply chain doesn't just exist. You pull it down from the like you build it, right? Like, and I think that's the thing that like has never been lost on me. And I do think that is a side effect of the nonprofit industry for sure. Is that like people want to believe that that everything lives and dies by the passion and the mission. So as long as you're passionate about the mission, well, those are the two things that should, and everything should just flow from that perspective.
Baby cold
milk and honey. And like, look, this is not the word coming down from the mountaintop that all of a sudden like broke the river in half. I'm getting all my analogies wrong with the point is,
I'm like, go say more, Ben.
Exactly right. This is not a Technicolor dream coat that was delivered by Mary. Again, all wrong. So, but that's the thing, right? Like so a lot of my work, there's like tools and resources, whatever, but I often will say things like, I have a very non-prescriptive approach. My approach is more about understanding like who you are and what you're capable of and how that matches against your goals and having really open conversations. And some people really connect with that. And some people want, clients like this. Some people they want you to come in and they either want to be able to have said they worked with you and that's the piece, or they want to be able to have just gone through the process. And the end outcome, and the thing that I struggle with, and like I cannot be more honest about this is something that I think people think is a line. It's not a line. Like that is my least favorite part about this industry, where people just want to be able to say they have worked with you, or they want to be able to have gone through the process, and they're not going to make use of anything.
I know.
Which is why I don't try to be prescriptive, because like at that point it's a game. It's nothing but a game. But that part to me is like the most, it's like sad. Like it's because then like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Because like, again, to our joke earlier, like if I want to get rich, I'll buy a bunch of like dump trucks and rent them out by the hour. And
to be honest, I've been thinking about I'll open a cleaning business. Like it's so neat in the area. Like,
I think I'd be good at that too, right? Like, yeah.
Like I just if that's the case, then I could just be done with this whole situation and do the hell out that. Because let me tell you what, it'd be the most.
Walk it dirty, it walks out clean. There's an appeal to that.
There is. So I think that you're so right, and I feel like that was one of the biggest risks that I took, and I think I'm still taking. That I was not going to follow a prescriptive pathway. I remember talking to a consultant firm earlier on where I was thinking about joining as a senior consultant. And that's one of the things of feedback that they gave me. Kishshana, you're a phenomenal trainer. You are a phenomenal coach. They were just like, man, the praise. And I was like, I'm waiting for the but you're not directive enough. Because I won't say, and I will. And I was like, you want me to lean in and tell it like it is? Because I do. But at the end of the day, I am also great at understanding early on who wants to actually dig in, roll up their sleeves and do the work, and who just wants to be told what to do. Like they're two sets of folk. And I don't want the second set of folks. They're nice. I love y'all. I hug on you at conferences and I love on y'all in sessions. But if you're coming to me to do trainings, consulting work, if you're coming to me to do coaching, any of that hands-on stuff that you really got to be ready to take off this jacket, sometimes a shirt, you just got to unpack it and address all the things. And I think that's what I love about how you approach it, because you're just breaking it down, but you're also saying upfront, this expectation is, as we jump into this body of work, as I train you to be better, as I train you to talk to folks better, have better conversations, put together better plans that you can actually use, all the work that you do, particularly in volunteer and corporate engagement, you make sure that folks know that the work is the work. And if you don't want to do the work, get out, you know?
My favorite thing, my favorite response to something that I've come across, I actually got this from my mother, is like some people, when people say to us, I want a single solution. And my response to that now is, great, then you just identify the single problem that is creating all your problems, and then done.
Done.
But like, I don't want to hear about the 14 problems, because I can't respond with 14 answers. So I need you to make sure you are prepared for your one problem, so that way I can give you a single solution. And that is when all of a sudden they realize real quick, oh, God, you're right. Like, exactly right. You can't come at me with 40 versions of why your problem is the problem, and all the elements about, like, you know, Judy doesn't do her job hard enough, and our tech isn't good enough, and our board isn't plugged in, and, you know, the executive director is completely, you know, not paying attention and not, you know, driving the ship at any given time, and our volunteers aren't committed, blah, blah, and then go, but we need a single solution. And usually I tell people, like, burn it down.
Burn it down.
Dissolve. Because I have been, one of my secret superpowers that people don't know a whole lot about is, like, I have been contracted in the past to dissolve nonprofits.
That's
like,
why, see, every time.
Yes.
I'm like, I had VPs of advancement at some universities who brought
yes.
me and said, well, I told you if Kishshana came, it'd be because all of you were at risk. And I was like, what kind of damn introduction is this?
I don't lead with that because it freaks people out. But yeah, if you
wasn't gonna lead with that.
You want one solution, yeah, here's a match. Like, burn it down.
Look,
like,
let me go get it for you.
Yes, right. I mean, but, and I think that's I'll say this because I think we both actually very much come from the same places, where you and I are so similar, right? Yeah. I think the other thing that people both really love about us, but I've joked for a long time in my life that if somebody doesn't like me, I can usually explain to them why they don't like me in one of three examples, right?
Yeah.
I think, like, my bluntness throws people off. I think sometimes the language I choose to use or not use throws people off. And I think my humor really throws people off. And when I first started, I was really self-conscious about how my weirdness and my humor and my glibness was going to present itself.
Yeah.
And then, like, the more I kept looking at the sector as a whole, and I was like, there's like 1.5 million of you guys out there, you know, like, I'll be fine. Like, I only need a very small portion of that business to survive. And so, but I think that's the part that you and I both have a lot too, is that we're like, even the sort of notion of like burn it down is, you know, because one of the things I talk a lot about when I'm talking to sort of to any group, it is this whole idea of like, hey, one of the best things you can do with a stakeholder is ask this question. If you know, philosophically, our organization was burning to the ground, what is the one thing you would run in and save? And to me, it's a better version of asking, like, what do you love about us? Because you get a bumper sticker response. I love your passion. I love your model. I love, you know, but if you ask, like, hey, proverbially, if we were like burning to the ground and you can only save one thing about us, what would it be? Would it be like our customer service? Would it be our business model? And it's like, I tell businesses the same thing. Like, say, like, if you only drop down to one thing that you sold on your menu, what would make them still come back to your store? Right? If they only sold one thing, what would be?
The answer cannot be everything's good. That's a lie.
Right? Like, you know, what do you love about the store? Oh, I love all the selection. But if you take that away and kind of go, hey, if we only sold one thing, what would that one thing be that would still make you come back and shop with any frequency? Like, if you change the narrative of what they think about. But I think you and I have such a we're comfortable with ourselves and we're comfortable in our skin to the extent that we can be. And because I think what makes us as funny as we are is that we're not comfortable in our skin often, right?
You're always trying to, yeah.
I'm going to beat you to the punch, right? I'm going to beat you to the fat joke. I'm going to beat you to the gay joke. I'm going to beat whatever I am that day. Yes, I'm pink, right? And so, but I think our sense of humor is both disarming and at times charming enough that people then, I think they trust us differently. Yeah. And they're at least, and here's where I am in my career at this point. Because you've been doing what you've been doing a lot longer than I have. I'm at a point where trust really is earned, and I get that. And so for now, I just need you to pay attention to me. That's where I'm at. At the moment, I just need to be paid attention to enough to get to the level to which you might trust me. And so humor for me has become a way by which I've become increasingly comfortable expressing myself that way. I always have been, but as a professional in this space, I've, in the past year especially, become increasingly comfortable because I realized.
Did you hear it?
I did. Pizza's here.
Okay, hold. So yeah, Ben, so like, you listen, I don't want to get you off your soapbox because, I know how you get sometimes, and I can listen to him all day, folks, so I'm biased, and then it'd be like a 2-hour recording, and y'all be like, Kish, I love you, but what are we doing? This is long, right? So one of the things that I'm always beefing about something, but what is your biggest pet peeve right now in the sector?
Well, I have so many.
Oh my God.
So I think my number one right now, we talked about this before together. I think my number one concern right now is how sexy it is to complain in the sector.
Oh my gosh, you and I were just talking about this, the sexiness of complaining.
It's really,
ooh,
and I get it. Look, I'm a big study of psychology, and I get that when you're sitting amongst peers and competitors, or the perspective of peers and competitors, and people who are above and below you, one of the fastest ways to connect with anybody is to talk about the weather, or talk about the food, but I also think we do have so many problems in the industry that it's really easy to just kind of lean into that and say oh, my board, or oh, my volunteer.
And then people are like, oh my God, I so know.
Yeah, my executive director doesn't get it, or we never make any money, or we've taken a vow of poverty, or whatever the case may be, right? The problem is that I think it's really fair to use that as a segue into a larger conversation. But what I've seen, especially in the last decade a lot, is that we have not figured out how to use that as a pivot point to then have a conversation about progress. It winds up becoming, instead, just where no one can do anything but just keep piling on. And then we all walk away feeling more defeated than we went into the conversation, even though we probably should feel more connected for what it's worth.
Right.
But we sort of relish in these moments. And I don't know, to me, I think it's a holistic disservice. I also think it's one of those reasons why people are still functionally confused about the sector, because we really don't have very much good to say until we're just trying to cram the mission down someone's throat, and
so they can give or donate or get connected.
But
And
it's exhausting, right? I find it difficult to even have well-defined conversations en masse about a subject area that doesn't just turn into a bit of a stitch and bitch. It's really hard to kind of do unpacking or to kind of talk through. And then the other thing that I've noticed really more recently than not, and again, I'm probably attuned to it differently, so maybe this has been around forever, right? I don't pretend to be Indiana Jones in any of this, but
we just discovered this.
I found it, right? I found it. But it's the other thing that I found is that when somebody does kind of raise their voice in any way, shape, or form, and kind of go well, I have a couple thoughts and solutions, everyone's no, that's not what this is about.
Try that. It's not even what this is about. We want to be
oh, aren't you special for knowing how to traverse this problem that we're all suggesting we have? And part of me is oh, so this is just a conversation about complaining. And I do think complaining's sexy, and I do think, I've met people in my life that where they are the happiest when they're unhappy. I think there's a very small portion of the population that really thrive in a world where they get to be unhappy and they feel affected, no matter what it is, waiting in a line. We all have to wait in lines, but for them, you see,
yes,
it is the worst thing that could ever happen to them, and it's worth an entire 14-page post on Facebook, right? But I have found that it kind of goes back, Julie and I from the Humane Society down in Georgia were talking about this a little bit, the conversation back and forth about sad photos versus happy photos, and the science behind sad versus happy with talking about beneficiaries. And for me, I don't know that it needs to be a conversation about whether sad or happy or more successful. I think it needs to be because I think complaining is successful. It's a successful way to communicate. I think there's a nobler effort that we need to apply to our lives where it isn't whether or not you can gain friends faster through complaining, but sort of saying, is that really what's helping all of us move anywhere? Is it
that's the question.
Right.
Honestly, think about it. If complaining in groups like that, at conferences, at meetings, at clusters, at whatever, right, actually resulted in more friends, whether they're professional friends or professional personal blends, then there wouldn't be all of these think pieces that still continue to crop up about how lonely it is to be a CEO and ED at the top, whatever you want to call it, right? Folks wouldn't feel as isolated. But what ends up happening is that you I love to talk about my faux fur. Then you get into this, what I call faux vulnerability.
Yes.
Where you only tell that sort of top layer of skin. I'm getting I have my little sun rash. It's okay. But it's a top layer of skin. You don't actually get real skin deep about what you're really experiencing enough for somebody to both identify and say like, oh, have you tried thinking about it like this? Because you don't get that deep. You only get.
It's not even like a genuine disconnect. It's like we actually work to make sure there won't be a connection at all. Like we are insistent.
Come on and talk about it.
It's just the weather. It's just it's the conversation about sports in a very casual setting. And you know what? Look, like fair enough. But I guess for me, it's become incredibly pervasive. And then what happens in that situation is like then you are reliant on somebody like me to quote unquote have all the answers, because with your peers, you've burnt out the opportunity to talk about anything of value because you're just there to complain. So I find that it's hard for us in our industry then to feel like that we become like the lightning rod for other things. I find that then when we want to unpack that, it feels like a moot point, or it feels like we're just treading on past conversations that they've already addressed. And so when we're trying to unpack it, people are like, oh, it's just bad, right? And so there's a part that sometimes feels like, oh, okay, we're just starting to really enjoy feeling affected. Like as an industry, we are finding a really happy balance. We are finding a contentment between the balance of pushing hard for our missions with passion and on the back end, complaining how hard it is and that nobody gets it, except everybody that does get it. And then all we want to talk about is how we all get it and nothing more. And I don't know, for me, it's too split down the middle for me to always know what to do with it. And I think that's, again, why I become as earnest as I do in my work, is that I try to unpack the garbage and try to have like real eye-to-eye conversations with people about what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. And so at least, because again, if I can't, and I've had this happen with clients, hopefully they don't watch this, like if I can't seem to make if I can't seem to make a real human connection, thanks for your check, I guess, because this won't work without that.
I think I agree with that. And I feel like that when I think about scaling, when I think about growing my business, for those of you who are watching this, Ben and I have been talking about basically the foundation of how to be friends in business and how to transcend that. And that applies to business owners, that applies to executive directors, that applies to whether you're watching this and you're a VP of development or VP of sales. Whether you're in talent or not, like all this stuff really applies, because ultimately it's just like you just said, Ben, it's about that human connection. And so I'm with you. Like, I think that, we talked about this at length about the sexiness of complaining. And I see this with my EDs who I coach all the time, that I have to really pull them out of what feels like they have gotten wound up like a ballerina in the little in the little box. And they're just spinning and unwinding, about what they've had to deal with, all valid, all true, all real-time things that are happening. But how much of that narrative are you going to hold on to when you're ready to start making some shifts? And so I love that. Any other pet peeves?
No, I will say, bouncing off that though, because I think we can both agree to this, the other thing that I try not to do in that space, right? Because I think one of my pet peeves within that pet peeve is when somebody then does that obnoxious sort of privilegey thing where they go, come on, there's got to be something good. And I'm not interested in that black and white conversation. I'm not interested in somebody's complaint being met with like, tell me one thing that's good. I'm more interested in kind of going deeper down the rabbit hole and sort of saying, okay, what are we going to really do about that problem then? Like if it's a problem, what are we going to really do about it? How do we actually deal with the problem for real? And that's when people are like, I just don't think we can. Okay, well then like what is complaining getting you? But what I hate, my other pet peeve is when you get those people who are like, well, let's talk about something positive. Or, right? Or they're like, what's one thing you do love about your job? And part of me is like, that is not, again, like the opposite of hate is not love. That's not working. That's also not, it's a really sort of crappy way to try to reframe the conversation to be about something different. For me, it's like, nope, let's hunker down with this thing you've just said sucks.
Right. And let's unpack it. Come on.
Make it suck less, right? Right. So like, what can we possibly do to make it suck less? And that's where the rubber hits the road. And so, yeah, other than that, pet peeve wise, like, I do think there's I joke about this all the time, but like you do need to have a mission and a vision.
Yes.
Period.
Period.
That's all. Please don't just have a mission. Please have a vision. Because I'll be honest,
vision.
Your mission without your vision is just an articulation of what you're doing every day, which is cool. Don't get me wrong, which is cool. Paint me a picture, please.
What is your one day? What does it mean? Where do you see this whole thing going? And also being able to be nimble enough to see where you want this thing to go in context of what is happening right now. Like, are you?
It's sexy not to have a vision. And I'm like, and it's so funny because I said that to somebody and somebody was like, yeah, it's pretty old school. I was like, oh yeah, nothing's as old school as having vision, right? Like, listen to yourself. Listen to the words that come out of your mouth. Like, you sound so ridiculous. Like, no, vision is sexy as hell.
Okay, like, can you have some vision? Like, folks will get behind you. Have you not been watching? Folks will get behind you on some vision. So, you know, you got to be able to put the work in, have some vision. Look, don't complain and just for complaining sake. Make you some friends and build you some relationships, folks. This is really important.
Right. People buy the artwork, not the artist.
Come on.
I've said this forever, right? So at the end of the day, like, you telling me how you do your art is very different than what you're trying to paint for me, and I want to know what the painting's going to look like. That is how I will donate towards buying your painting. It's not watching you do your craft, right?
Exactly. That is so right. Yep. So what do you think leaders should talk about more?
I mean, I do think they should talk more about really, Kathy and I talk about this a lot, the idea of why. I do think we should do more about getting at the heart of things and unpacking things. I do think we should make more conscious decisions and make more decisions with a sense of intent. So, really knowing that something may take 30 different steps is far more valuable than pretending that it only takes 3. Or not knowing how many it takes at all. And so I do think leaders need to really, and I think there's a lot of different words for it, and people interpret those words differently, strategy and process and flow. But I do think there's something to be said about finding the resources to unpack the details so you can make an informed decision. So if I talk about this a lot in my work, like what I do more often than not with people is help them make informed decisions. And so if you're okay with saying no to something, but knowing that there's something to say no to, I have more respect for that than not knowing the difference at all and just doing the thing that you're doing.
Absolutely.
So I think leaders need to get more comfortable at asking why. They need to get more comfortable at unpacking things. They get more comfortable at looking at the variations and options. One of the things I've talked about forever at the sort of what I call the non-Fortune 500 level, the kind of big $1 billion level nonprofit, is most of those guys, they're good at what they do. There's science behind what they do. They've won the marketing game on so many levels and so forth. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems they do face, though, whether you're Habitat or you're Red Cross or you're Feeding America or whoever you are, is that you usually at that level beyond that, the category you're in, usually don't have a true contemporary. There's no Coke to your Pepsi. There's no Walmart to your Target. And so you don't really know if what you do is the best version of itself because you have nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see organizations too, especially at the community-based level, look at their contemporaries across the spectrum and figure out if somebody has a different way of doing something that's better. And because if you're trying to solve a real problem, this is the altruist in me talking, but if you're trying to solve a real problem, the problem deserves to have some of the best solutions slated against it in order to truly solve it. Otherwise, you're just saying you're trying to solve a problem. You don't have a real invested interest in whether or not it's really solving a problem.
Absolutely.
So I think leaders should also spend a little bit more appropriately looking over the fence and not at their competition between the different types of nonprofits, but looking really thoughtfully at the type of nonprofit they are and trying to understand if there's a different or better way to do something. Because the thing that I would love to see more happen across the industry is that when somebody has figured out a really strong way, something that's figured out how to bottle something, to our point earlier, that they can share it. I mean, I look at Tesla as just a really interesting company that said like, hey, we found a better way to make a motor and you can all have it.
I think that is so crazy. I was doing that in one of my classes the other day with my students. We were talking about Tesla specifically. It's random you brought that up, but that boggled their minds. Like we just said here. Like we can keep innovating, folks.
And my work is very similar to yours in that way too. I think the thing that we do a lot as well is that we have steps and processes and they're not really prescriptive, but they're lined out and it's not hidden. You don't have to like, I'm going to charge you and you should want to pay for me to come in and kind of express it. But I'll hand you the tools and resources. I mean, I'm not trying to pretend like, ooh, no. The one joke I make all the time though is that like, I won't explain what Rhinocorn is unless you hire me.
Yes, I love it.
I bring it up all the time. But regardless, I try to have like one thing that I'm pulling back. But
Yeah.
no, I do think like we should do a better job of trying to understand if we're trying to solve the world, what it takes to solve the world, and then sharing that resource and being vulnerable enough to benefit from that resource if what we're doing is different and not as good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a long answer to a short question.
No, but it needs to be said, because I think like part of the whole reason why I started the Secret Lives of Leaders was because we're rushing conversations, right? Like everybody's doing 1 hour webinars, 45 minutes for the webinar, 15 minutes for the question. Do a 9 minute or less live, do a 1 minute tidbit, you know, do a 30-second, you know, for you follow me on IG, 15 seconds on IG stories. I mean, you just gotta, like, we are rushing all the time. And so, you know, my hope is that folks are like downloading this and listening to this on their commute. And if they're not watching the video, listening to the audio.
Oh my God, by the way.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for something. Because I forget. And I want to make sure people see that I thank you for this. So when we were together last time and we were talking about the difference between an hour and 90 minutes, for example, and how like, you know, people are like, 90 minutes for a session. And you said something that like, I had never thought about from this lens, and it completely transformed my perspective on the hour versus the 90 minutes. And you said, look, in an hour, I just remind myself that I'm just there to inspire people at the end of the day, that like the hour allows me to inspire and 90 minutes allows us to dig in a little deeper. And I had to tell you, Kish, until you said that, I now feel like I have the ability to make good use of the hour and not resent the fact that I don't have 90 minutes to try to do what I always sort of in my head thought of as the real work. And I just want to thank you for that, because it was just this little thing that completely cracked my head in half. And I was like, right, okay, I need to pivot the 60 minutes into people being inspired enough to take next steps and to think next piece, or at least to come out feeling like they've got something to hang their hat on. And then yes, in a 90-minute, 2-hour session, whatever it looks like, we can dig into the details. But I never thought about it from that lens, and it just completely transformed my way of thinking about 60 minutes. So just thank you.
I love that. And I think that, thank you so much, Ben. And I love that, you know, and for me, like I felt, and for those of y'all who hear this clip, like the pressure to perform when you're an overachiever is no joke.
Oh my God.
And Ben, I know you feel the same way. Some days I wish I was up average. You hear me? And I'm not bragging, y'all, but I'm bragging. Like when you actually are really smart, the bar is high, and your desire to do nothing is also high, right? Because there's just so much stuff to do and so much information that's coming. The inputs that come in are coming in so fast that I just want to lay down and sleep. And so for me,
you are so smart.
Oh, thank you. I love it. And so for me to be able to be sane and to stop feeling like I was operating in a zero-sum game in every aspect of my life, I had to really start to give myself some space. Yep. And so one of the things that was one of the things I was like, I got 60 minutes I can inspire you. I got 90 minutes we can dig deeper. I got 3 hours I can teach. Yep. You know? And I saw that like when I teach my kids at Baruch, Lord, they're young adults, folks. I teach in 3-hour blocks. Those are the best. And I thought, you know, I'm long-winded, I'm verbose, you know, so I like to talk, but I can actually get through and I can see that it's happening.
You can really facilitate.
Exactly.
I can't facilitate in an hour. Not really.
It's so hard.
It's too much. So much of facilitation, if you're doing it right, is not just simply pausing for the response you're looking to hear, right? So much of facilitation is about truly gaining an understanding in order to do it well, about understanding where people are. And, you know, when you got 50, 30, 60, 150 people in the room, trying to accomplish that in an hour is almost impossible.
Almost impossible. I moderated something the other day on talent and race at the AFP Icon conference, and it was about, you know, 75, 80 minutes, 90 minutes. Well, it was 90 minutes. Folk were like, we could have been here for another hour and a half. Easy. Like people just kept saying like, this was not enough time. We could have dug in more. We would have, I mean, like they were ready to do some work. And so I think that that's also an interesting challenge that we have when you're thinking about how to get leaders to think more, to do more, to be able to be responsive and not reactive and not feel like they just want to get under the covers. you know, what are we really thinking about? What's keeping us up at night? What are leaders really struggling with? What's in our secret lives, you know? And so I just appreciate you being able to spend some time with me today to be able just to talk through, you know, sort of our kitchen sink of ideas about what it really means to like show up and be yourself, and also to do the work that you do at the level you do it. Because you have some, look, he is not going to brag on himself, but I could brag on him. This is a national consulting firm. You hear? I'm a boutique firm that takes on projects that I like. Ben is like, I'm a national consulting firm. I'm like, I have suitcase, we'll travel, you know?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
This is the big stuff that we've got to talk about. Yeah. So Ben, how can folks reach you? So now, y'all see all the stuff below, but how?
Oh my God, it's such a litany. So you can find me and Rhinocorn both on Twitter, right? So Rhinocorn, LLC on Twitter, Ben Bisbee. I keep it super simple. You know, I'm an early adopter of tech, so like I like Ben Bisbee at Yahoo, Ben Bisbee at Gmail. Right, I kept it real simple. Yeah. So Ben Bisbee on Twitter, and then I'm a huge fan of people doing casual connections on LinkedIn, because people are writing and talking and conversing on there. It's not like it used to be like 5 years ago where people are like, if I don't know you, I won't submit. Yes. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of LinkedIn connections. I also think it's easier than email when you're trying to just sort of start a conversation with people casually behind the back end. Facebook is fine. I have the 31st Century Nonprofit Network, which
I'm a part of this.
It's just a fun place to connect with other people and have conversations and share content, whether you wrote it or you read it and you want to discuss it. Those are the easy places. You know, my website, rhinocornconsulting.com, and then I'm Ben at rhinocornconsulting.com. And yeah, and I, as you well know, I love a casual conversation. I love an in-depth conversation. I love just like a verbal high five.
A verbal high five. Did a good job, Frank. You did a good job.
Actually, I think we'll probably be side by side, right? So I'll do either one, and then
we can do it together. Ooh, 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 yes.
But no, I, you know, and I love to be connected with. My biggest fear when I started this was everything just falling into the vortex of silence, and thankfully, it hasn't been like that. But I and let me just say this, right? Like, my parting thought, like, there is a segment of the population doesn't believe this. Most of us don't. And that is, just reach out and just say, I really appreciate something you said, or I just like, thank you for saying something, or just, I watched your thing, it was great. Like, I know that sounds kind of corny, and I'm not saying it because I'm looking for some form of like assurance or accolade, although arguably it's always nice to feel assured and have somebody say something nice about you. Totally. I feel like we're just so afraid, as we, like in the very early part of our conversation, to make a true connection, to try to build some form of friendship, to try to build some form of relationship. And like, so I feel like both of us can say this with a certain sense of assurity. We're not gonna ignore that outreach. We're gonna make good use of it. We're gonna be good stewards of somebody who is willing to put themselves out there in a situation where they're fearful that I may not respond. And so like, I just encourage people to do that.
Yeah, just connect. Like I said all the time, I respond to every single LinkedIn connection.
Me too.
Every single person who writes me a note, I write back exactly
Me too. I don't do the thumbs up.
I don't do thumbs up, no.
I hate that little yellow thumbs up.
I'm like, oh, that's what they, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
I don't do the canned like thank you with no punctuation. Yeah. Here's what I tell people all the time. If you don't see punctuation, I didn't write it, because I'm a total punctuation nerd. I put commas. My thing is, thank you, comma, Elaine, exclamation. Like, so if it's just like a thank you,
I do hit the button by accident. You're like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Yeah.
I actually did that the other day. Just yesterday, somebody wrote to me from the Wild Apricot webinar, and I had never used it, and I was like, oh, I can start with that, and I didn't realize it just auto sent. And I was like, so I wrote to her, and I was like, fun fact. What I went to write was like blah blah blah, and I thought I could use that as a template. I didn't think it would auto send, so I totally apologize for that, because I hate auto send.
Yeah, no. Even when I send stuff out, like even when I send stuff to my list or I send thank yous, like everybody who's touched my stuff knows, like it sounds and reads like I'm talking directly to you, because I am.
Yep.
You know, like that's just how I'm made. It takes me longer. I don't care, because that's just what it is. So I'm so glad that you shared.
I think that's the thing you and I have in common too. We both write like we talk, and that's rare than I think we realize.
Is it? Because I don't know.
Yes.
I just can't. That's what I do. I
get complimented for it all the time, and I think it does throw people off that don't know us. It sometimes comes off as a little funky, but you know, like whatever. Get to know me. That's my point.
Correct.
If you get to know me, it won't come off as funky at all. But I do find that more and more, that's not true. So I think that's another thing we have in common, is that we both are very good at writing the way we talk.
which is so good. Thanks. I didn't realize that. All the things that give me all the feels. Listen, y'all, if you have hung out with us for this entire time or come back to this after your coffee break on lunch, you needed some time to walk away, go for a walk. I hope that you have learned some things about Ben and I today and just about like how to be a better leader and a better manager, to show up as your most authentic self in the world, to be able to be unafraid to express some vulnerability. That'll get you some friends, some people, and some success, y'all, okay? This is The Secret Lives of Leaders. I am Kishshana Palmer, your host, the queen of focus, your philanthropic fairy godmother, all the things, okay?
The diva of the nonprofit.
The diva, you know, all the things. And so I am so excited. My contact information is below. I'll have another great guest soon, and please share this with all your friends. Let them know, like, look, we got some learning to do and some folks who are willing to help us learn. And so we're together, and we will talk to you real soon.
Bye. Thank you, gorgeous.
All right.